The transport ship Viridian Dawn drifted silently through the void, its cargo bay filled with representatives from 12 different species. Kextar pressed his four-fingered hands against the reinforced viewing port, watching the blue-green planet grow larger in the distance. Earth, the legendary homeworld of humanity. As a documentary filmmaker for the Galactic Broadcasting Network, Kextar had covered conflicts across the galaxy for over 30 standard years. He had witnessed the methodical precision of Zentorian military campaigns, the brutal efficiency of Korvaxi siege warfare, and the elegant tactical dances of the ethereal fleet admiralty. But humans? They were different. Every species in the galaxy knew it, though few understood why. "First time seeing Earth?" asked Dr. Ilena Sorsh, the expedition's xenobiologist. Her pale blue skin shimmered under the ship's artificial lighting, and her large, dark eyes reflected genuine curiosity. The Altarian had volunteered for this mission despite knowing the risks. "No," Kextar replied, adjusting the recording equipment mounted on his shoulder. "I covered the Titan Mining Rebellion 3 cycles ago. But this is different. This time, we're not just observing from orbit." The mission briefing had been clear. The Galactic Council needed first-hand documentation of human combat behavior for the Strategic Assessment Archives. Humanity had been members of the galactic community for only 15 standard years, yet their military interventions had already changed the balance of power in 3 major sectors. The Council's military analysts couldn't understand how a species that had barely achieved faster-than-light travel could consistently outmaneuver and defeat enemies with centuries more experience. Captain Morvac, a grizzled Korvaxi veteran, approached their group. His reptilian features bore the scars of countless battles, and his voice carried the weight of authority. "We'll be landing at Forward Operating Base Zulu 7 in 6 hours. Remember, you're observers only. The humans have agreed to let us document their operations, but they won't be adjusting their tactics for our comfort." Kextar nodded, though a chill ran down his spine. The humans had been fighting a brutal campaign against the hegemony for 8 months. The enemy was a coalition of 4 species that had invaded the Kepler 442 system, claiming it as their rightful territory. The system's human colonists had requested aid from Earth, and the response had been swift and decisive. What followed defied all conventional military wisdom. Instead of deploying their most advanced warships and overwhelming the enemy with superior technology, humanity had sent what they called a Marine Expeditionary Unit. 3,000 soldiers, minimal space support, and equipment that most galactic military experts considered outdated. The enemy outnumbered them 8 to 1. Their ships were faster, their weapons more powerful, their armor more sophisticated. By every logical calculation, the humans should have been defeated within days. Instead, they had been winning. As the transport descended through Earth's atmosphere, Kextar caught his first glimpse of the staging area. Hundreds of human soldiers moved with purposeful efficiency across the tarmac. Their equipment looked bulky and primitive compared to the sleek warfare systems used by other species, yet there was something unsettling about their movements. They didn't march in formation like Centaurians or glide with the fluid grace of ethereals. They moved like predators, constantly aware of their surroundings, ready to react to threats that might not even exist. "Look at their eyes," whispered Dr. Sorsh. "Have you ever seen anything like that?" Kextar focused his recording equipment on a group of human marines loading supplies. Their eyes were different from other species he had observed, not just in color or structure, but in the way they moved, constantly scanning, evaluating, calculating. Even during routine tasks, they maintained a level of awareness that seemed almost paranoid. Lieutenant Colonel Sarah Chun met them at the landing pad. She was smaller than most of the aliens in the observation group, yet her presence commanded immediate attention. Her dark hair was pulled back severely, and her brown eyes held an intensity that made Kextar uncomfortable. "Welcome to FOB Zulu 7, she said without preamble. "I understand you're here to document our operations. Fine. But understand this, we're not performers in your documentary. We're soldiers fighting a war. You'll see what you see, but you won't interfere, you won't ask questions during combat operations, and you'll follow every order given by my personnel without hesitation. Clear?" The assembled observers nodded quickly. Chin's tone wasn't threatening, but There was something in her voice that suggested questioning her authority would be unwise. Good. Your first observation opportunity is in 2 hours. We're conducting a raid on an enemy supply depot approximately 50 kilometers from here. The terrain is mountainous, the enemy is well entrenched, and they outnumber our assault team 3-1. She paused, studying their faces. Any of you want to back out now? No one moved. Excellent. Report to Briefing Room Alpha in 90 minutes. And remember, what you're about to see has been classified as disturbing content by the Galactic Psychological Wellness Board. If any of you experience trauma-induced episodes, medical personnel are standing by. As Chin walked away, Kextar exchanged glances with his fellow observers. The warning should have been reassuring. The galactic military had protocols for everything, including protecting non-combatant observers from psychological damage during warfare documentation. But something about the way Chun had delivered the warning suggested that their protocols might not be adequate. Dr. Sorsh pulled out her portable research scanner and began taking readings from the human soldiers moving around them. After a few minutes, she frowned and recalibrated the device. "This can't be right," she muttered. "What?" asked Kextar. "Their biometrics. Heart rate, neural activity, hormone levels. According to my readings, these humans are operating under constant stress levels that would be considered medically dangerous for most species. Yet they appear completely normal. Maybe your scanner needs adjustment. I tested it on you and the others. It's working perfectly." She showed him the display. "Look at this. Their baseline cortisol levels are higher than what most species experience during combat. Their neural activity suggests constant hypervigilance. And their muscle tension indicates they're always ready for immediate physical action." Kextar studied the readouts. "You're saying they live in a permanent state of readiness for violence. I'm saying they've evolved for it. This isn't conditioning or training. This is biology." The briefing room was sparse and functional, filled with maps, tactical displays, and weapons that looked both sophisticated and brutally simple. Major Rodriguez, the operation commander, stood before a holographic representation of the target area while 36 Marines sat in perfect attention. "Intelligence indicates the depot contains enough supplies to support enemy operations for 6 months, Rodriguez began. 42 confirmed hostiles, possibly more. They've got overlapping fields of fire, automated defenses, and aerial support on standby." He gestured to the hologram, highlighting various points with a laser pointer. "We're going in fast and loud. Alpha Team takes the eastern approach. Bravo Team comes from the south. Charlie Team provides overwatch from the ridge line. Mission time, 18 minutes from insertion to extraction." One of the Marines raised her hand. "Rules of engagement, sir?" "Standard protocol. If it shoots at you, shoot back. If it might shoot at you, shoot first. If you're not sure, use your judgment and live with the consequences." Kextar felt his stomach tighten. The casual way Rodriguez discussed lethal force was unlike anything he had witnessed in other military briefings. Most galactic species approached warfare as a necessary but regrettable activity, bound by extensive protocols and ethical considerations. The humans spoke about killing with the same tone they might use to discuss maintenance schedules. "Transport leaves in 30 minutes, Rodriguez concluded. "Questions? What about prisoners, sir?" asked another Marine. "Take them if it's convenient. Don't risk lives for it." "Civilian casualties?" "There are no civilians in a military supply depot. Anyone there chose to be there." The simplicity of their planning was disturbing. Most military operations Kextar had documented involved complex tactical calculations, detailed contingency plans, and extensive coordination between multiple units. The humans seemed to prefer a more direct approach. Identify the target, apply overwhelming violence, complete the mission. The flight to the target zone took 40 minutes in what the humans called a Pelican dropship. Kextar and the other observers were strapped into jump seats alongside the Marines, experiencing firsthand the casual efficiency of human military transport. The soldiers didn't talk much during the flight, but their silence wasn't peaceful. They checked their weapons, reviewed their gear, and maintained constant awareness of their surroundings. 2 minutes to insertion, announced the pilot. The Marines began their final preparations with mechanical precision. Weapons were charged, armor systems activated, communications checked. Kextar noticed that their movements had changed. The earlier efficiency was replaced by something more primal, more focused. "Look at their faces," Dr. Sorsh whispered urgently. Kextar turned his recording equipment toward the Marines and felt his breathing stop. Their expressions had changed completely. The professional soldiers who had briefed them an hour ago were gone, replaced by something that looked almost feral. Their eyes had become flat and predatory, their features set in expressions of cold determination. 30 seconds. The Marines rose as one, moving to the dropship's rear ramp. Their transformation was complete. These weren't soldiers anymore. They were hunters, and they had found their prey. The ramp dropped open, revealing the mountainous terrain below. Without hesitation, the Marines began their rapid descent on rappelling lines, disappearing into the rocky landscape with supernatural speed and silence. "Observers remain aboard until the landing zone is secured," announced the crew chief. Estimated time, 20 minutes. Kextar pressed his recording equipment against a viewing port, watching the human soldiers disappear among the rocks and trees. Within seconds, they had vanished completely, as if the mountainside had swallowed them. For 15 minutes, nothing happened. The landscape below remained peaceful, showing no sign of the approaching storm. Then, the shooting started. The sound reached them first, a rapid staccato of gunfire that seemed to come from everywhere at once. Bright flashes erupted from multiple positions around the enemy depot, and Kextar realized he was witnessing something unprecedented. The Marines hadn't approached the target cautiously or attempted to minimize violence. They had surrounded it and attacked simultaneously from all directions. "Multiple contacts engaged," crackled Rodriguez's voice over the communications system. "Resistance is heavy, but manageable." Manageable. As if the systematic destruction unfolding below was simply another day's work. The depot's automated defenses came online, filling the air with streams of energy bolts and projectile rounds. For most species, such firepower would have forced a tactical withdrawal and regrouping. The humans seemed to consider it a minor inconvenience. Through his recording equipment's telescopic lens, Kextar caught glimpses of individual Marines moving through the battlefield. They didn't take cover behind rocks and trees like conventional soldiers. They used the terrain as concealment while advancing constantly toward their objectives. Even under heavy fire, they never stopped moving forward. "Alpha Team has breached the eastern perimeter," reported one voice. "Bravo Team is inside the compound," added another. "Charlie Team has eliminated the command post," finished a third. 18 minutes after the shooting started, Rodriguez's voice crackled over the communications again. "Mission complete. All objectives secured. Preparing for extraction." Kextar stared at the tactical display in disbelief. The enemy depot, which had been marked as a hardened defensive position, had been completely overrun in less time than it took most species to deploy their forces. "Casualties?" asked the pilot. 3 wounded, none serious. "Enemy casualties are significant." The return flight was subdued. The Marines sat quietly, cleaning their weapons and completing post-mission procedures with the same mechanical efficiency they had shown earlier. Their predatory intensity had faded, replaced by professional calm, but Kextar noticed they remained constantly alert. Dr. Sorsh was studying her scanner readings again, her blue skin pale with concern. "Their biometric levels during combat were beyond anything in my database. Heart rate, adrenaline, neural activity. They should have been incapacitated by their own physiological responses. But they weren't," Kextar observed. "No. If anything, the extreme stress seemed to enhance their performance. It's as if their entire biology is optimized for violence." Back at FOB Zulu 7, Lieutenant Colonel Chun debriefed the observation team in her office. Maps covered every available wall space, and tactical reports were scattered across her desk. She looked tired but satisfied. "What did you think of your first human military operation?" she asked. The observers exchanged uncertain glances. Finally, Dr. Sorsh spoke up. "Your soldiers' biological responses to combat stress are unlike anything we've documented. Most species experience performance degradation under such conditions." Chin nodded. "We call it getting into the zone. Combat brings out the best in us." "The best?" Kextar couldn't hide his shock. "You consider that level of violence beneficial?" "Violence is a tool," Chen replied calmly. Like any tool, its value depends on how you use it. My Marines used it to accomplish their mission with minimal friendly casualties and maximum enemy disruption. That's successful application of force. But the psychological impact will be processed and integrated through established protocols. My people aren't traumatized by doing their jobs effectively. They're proud of it. Chen's matter-of-fact discussion of warfare's psychological effects was disturbing. Most galactic military forces provided extensive counseling and support for soldiers who had experienced combat. The humans seemed to consider violence a natural and healthy part of their existence. Tomorrow we're conducting a larger operation, Chen continued. The enemy is massing forces for a counterattack against our forward positions. We'll be hitting them with a full battalion assault before they can organize their offensive. How many enemy soldiers? Asked Dr. Sorsh. Approximately 2,000. And your force? 600 Marines. Kextar felt dizzy. You're attacking a force that outnumbers you more than 3 to 1. Those odds are actually pretty good for us. We prefer situations where we're outnumbered. It means the enemy gets overconfident and makes mistakes. As they left Chen's office, Kextar realized that everything he thought he knew about warfare had been wrong. The humans didn't just accept violence as a necessary evil. They embraced it as an expression of their nature. They didn't fight despite being outnumbered. They fought because they were outnumbered. That night, as he reviewed the day's recordings, Kextar began to understand why the Galactic Council was concerned about humanity's military capabilities. It wasn't just their effectiveness in combat, though that was impressive enough. It was their fundamental relationship with violence itself. Other species fought when they had to. Humans fought because they could. And that difference might change the balance of power in the galaxy forever. The sounds of distant artillery drifted across the base as Kextar prepared his equipment for the next day's observation. Tomorrow's operation would be larger, more complex, and undoubtedly more violent than today's raid. He found himself both dreading and anticipating what he would witness. The humans had promised to show them how they fought when the odds were truly against them. Based on what he had seen today, Kextar suspected that tomorrow would provide insights into human nature that the galaxy wasn't prepared to understand. As he drifted off to sleep, the image of those predatory faces haunted his dreams. Somewhere in the darkness beyond the base perimeter, 2,000 enemy soldiers were preparing for battle, confident in their numerical superiority. They had no idea what was coming for them. The pre-dawn darkness at FOB Zulu 7 hummed, with barely contained energy. 600 Marines moved through their final preparations with the fluid efficiency Kextar was beginning to recognize as distinctly human. Unlike the previous day's raid, this operation would involve multiple battalions, coordinated air support, and objectives that stretched across 50 square kilometers of hostile territory. Kextar checked his recording equipment one final time while Dr. Sorsh calibrated her biometric scanners. The other observers, 2 Zentorian military analysts, a Corvaxi tactical specialist, and an ethereal strategic advisor, clustered around a tactical display showing the enemy's positions. I still cannot comprehend their strategy, muttered Zarketh, the senior Zentorian analyst. His crystalline exoskeleton reflected the display's glow as he studied the human battle plan. They're dividing their forces into smaller units and attacking from multiple directions simultaneously. Such dispersion should result in defeat in detail. Commander Thexari, the Corvaxi specialist, nodded agreement. My species has studied warfare for millennia. This approach violates every principle of concentrated force application. They will be overwhelmed piecemeal. Dr. Sorsh looked up from her scanner readings. Their biometric levels suggest they're not concerned about the tactical situation. If anything, their stress indicators are lower than they were yesterday. Lower. Kextar couldn't hide his surprise. They're about to attack a force 3 times their size. Exactly. Their heart rates are steady, cortisol levels are normal, and their neural activity suggests calm focus rather than combat anxiety. It's as if they're approaching this as a routine exercise. Lieutenant Colonel Chun approached their group, her gear loadout more comprehensive than the previous day. Night vision systems, enhanced communications equipment, and weapons that looked designed for sustained combat rather than surgical strikes. Final briefing in 10 minutes, she announced. This operation is significantly more complex than yesterday's raid. so I want to make sure you understand what you're going to see. She led them to a command bunker where Major Rodriguez and his staff had assembled a three-dimensional holographic battlefield map. Enemy positions were marked in red, human units in blue, with movement arrows and timing sequences creating a complex web of coordinated actions. Operation Sledgehammer commences at 0530 hours, Rodriguez began. Intelligence indicates the enemy has consolidated 2,000 soldiers at Forward Base Tango for a planned assault on our positions. Instead of waiting for their attack, we're going to hit them first. He gestured to the holographic display, highlighting different sections of the enemy base. The target is a fortified position with overlapping defensive fields, automated weapons systems, and close air support available. Under normal circumstances, attacking such a position would require overwhelming numerical superiority and extensive preliminary bombardment. What makes these circumstances abnormal? Asked Zarketh. Rodriguez smiled, and Kextar felt an involuntary chill at the expression. We're humans. We don't do normal warfare. The battle plan was unlike anything in standard galactic military doctrine. Rather than concentrating their forces for a single decisive assault, the Marines were dividing into 12 separate teams, each with specific objectives within the enemy base. Some teams would attack the perimeter defenses, others would strike at command and control centers, while still others would target ammunition depots and communication arrays. The goal isn't to overwhelm them with superior force, Chen explained. It's to create so many simultaneous problems that their command structure breaks down. When beings are confused and frightened, they make mistakes. When they make mistakes, we exploit them. But if your forces are divided, protested Commander Thexari, the enemy can concentrate against individual teams and defeat them one by one. Only if they can identify which teams pose the greatest threat and coordinate their response effectively. In practice, they'll be too busy dealing with immediate crises to develop coherent counterstrategies. Dr. Sorsh raised her hand. What about casualties? This plan exposes your people to significant risk. Chen's expression grew serious. War involves risk. My Marines understand that and accept it. What they won't accept is sitting in defensive positions waiting for the enemy to choose the time and place of battle. The briefing continued for another 30 minutes, covering contingencies, communication protocols, and extraction procedures. Throughout the presentation, Kextar was struck by the Marines' calm confidence. They weren't approaching this as a desperate gamble or a heroic last stand. To them, attacking a superior force was simply another tactical problem to be solved through professional application of violence. As the observers prepared to board their transport aircraft, Kextar noticed something that made his skin crawl. The Marines weren't just confident about the upcoming battle. They were eager for it. Their movements had that same predatory quality he'd witnessed the previous day, but amplified. These soldiers weren't going to war reluctantly. They were hunting, and they had found prey worthy of their attention. The command and control aircraft circled the battlefield at a safe distance, providing the observers with a comprehensive view of the operation's development. Through enhanced optics and sensor arrays, they could monitor individual teams as they approached their objectives. All units report ready, announced Rodriguez over the communications system. Operation Sledgehammer is now active. For the first few minutes, nothing visible happened. The enemy base appeared peaceful in the pre-dawn darkness, its sentries maintaining routine patrols while automated systems scanned for threats. The human teams had vanished into the landscape as completely as if they had never existed. Then, chaos erupted from everywhere at once. Explosions bloomed across the enemy perimeter as demolitions teams eliminated automated defenses. Gunfire crackled from a dozen different positions as assault teams engaged defenders. Communications towers toppled as infiltration specialists severed the base's connection to external support. This is incredible, whispered Zarketh, studying the tactical display. They've achieved simultaneous surprise at 12 different points. The coordination required for such timing. Look at their movement patterns, added Commander Thexari. Each team is advancing constantly, never remaining static long enough for the enemy to organize concentrated fire. Dr. Sorsh monitored her biometric readings with growing amazement. Their stress levels during combat are actually decreasing. It's as if violence calms them. Through the aircraft's sensors, Kextar watched individual Marines moving through the battlefield. Their tactics were unlike anything he had documented. They didn't advance by rushes between covered positions like conventional soldiers. Instead, they flowed through the combat zone like liquid, constantly moving, constantly attacking, never giving their enemies time to react or regroup. Team Alpha has secured the Eastern Ammunition Depot, reported one voice. Team Charlie has eliminated the primary communications array, added another. Team Hotel is engaging the reserve barracks. Heavy resistance, but manageable. Manageable. Even when outnumbered and under fire, the humans considered heavy resistance merely manageable. Their casual attitude toward overwhelming odds was becoming a pattern that disturbed Kextar more each time he witnessed it. The enemy's response was predictable and ultimately self-defeating. Faced with multiple simultaneous attacks, their commanders attempted to reinforce every threatened position. This scattered their defenders across the entire base, preventing them from achieving decisive superiority anywhere. "They're doing exactly what we expected," Chen observed with satisfaction. "Panic responses instead of tactical thinking." "How did you know they would react this way?" asked Sarketh. "Because that's how most species react to sudden, overwhelming violence. They try to defend everything, which means they defend nothing effectively." Through his recording equipment, Kextar watched the systematic destruction of the enemy base unfold with mechanical precision. The human teams weren't just attacking military targets. They were dismantling the enemy's ability to function as a coherent force. Communications were severed, command structures eliminated, supply lines disrupted, and morale shattered through constant, unpredictable violence. "Team Romeo has breached the central command bunker," announced a new voice. "Confirmed. Primary resistance is collapsing across all sectors," added Rodriguez. "Estimated time to full objective completion, 12 minutes. 12 minutes. The enemy force that had taken weeks to assemble and fortify was being systematically destroyed in less time than most species required for preliminary reconnaissance. Dr. Source scanner readings were becoming increasingly alarming. Their biochemical responses to sustained combat are beyond anything in our databases. Adrenaline levels that should cause cardiac failure, neural activity that should result in psychological breakdown, muscle tension that should lead to immediate collapse. But they're performing better than ever," Kextar observed. "Exactly. It's as if extreme violence enhances their capabilities rather than degrading them." The ethereal strategic advisor, who had remained silent throughout the observation, finally spoke. "We are witnessing the emergence of an apex predator species on the galactic stage. Their entire biology is optimized for warfare in ways we never imagined possible." As the battle entered its final phase, Kextar began to understand the true horror of what they were documenting. The humans weren't just effective warriors. They were a species that had evolved specifically for violence, shaped by millions of years of constant warfare on a death world that had challenged them in ways that no other known environment ever had. "All primary objectives secured," announced Rodriguez. "Beginning extraction phase." The withdrawal was as coordinated and efficient as the attack had been. Human teams extracted from their positions in predetermined sequences, providing covering fire for each other while maintaining constant movement. The enemy, what remained of them, could only watch helplessly as their destroyers vanished back into the landscape. Total elapsed time from initial assault to complete extraction, 27 minutes. Enemy casualties, estimated 90%. Human casualties, 8 wounded, none seriously. The return flight to FOB Zulu 7 was subdued. The Marines sat quietly, performing post-combat maintenance on their equipment with the same mechanical precision they brought to everything else. Their earlier predatory intensity had faded, replaced by professional satisfaction at a job well done. "How do you process what you just did?" Dr. Sorsh asked Sergeant Martinez, a young woman who had personally eliminated an enemy squad leader during the assault. Martinez looked confused by the question. "Process what, ma'am?" "The violence. The killing. The psychological impact of taking lives. Ma'am, those people were enemies who would have killed me and my friends if I hadn't stopped them first. I don't see anything that needs processing." The casual way she discussed lethal combat made Kextar's skin crawl. For most galactic species, Taking a life was a traumatic experience that required extensive psychological support and cultural rituals to integrate. For humans, it seemed to be simply another job skill. Back at the base, Lieutenant Colonel Chun conducted another debriefing session, reviewing the operation's successes and areas for improvement. The discussion was clinical and professional, focused on tactical lessons and procedural refinements rather than the moral implications of their actions. The enemy's response time to our initial assault was slower than anticipated, Chen noted. Future operations can exploit this weakness with more aggressive infiltration timelines. What about the psychological impact on enemy survivors? Asked Commander Thexari. That's an operational advantage, Chen replied matter-of-factly. Survivors will report our capabilities to their higher command. Fear is a force multiplier that we can use in future engagements. The humans weren't just comfortable with violence. They were weaponizing the psychological trauma they inflicted on their enemies. The concept was so alien to standard galactic military thinking that none of the observers could formulate appropriate follow-up questions. Tomorrow we're conducting a deep reconnaissance mission behind enemy lines, Chen continued. A small team will infiltrate their rear areas to gather intelligence on their strategic capabilities and future operational plans. How small a team? Asked Dr. Sorsh. 4 Marines. Against how many enemy forces? Unknown. Potentially several thousand spread across 100 square kilometers. Kextar felt dizzy again. You're sending 4 people into enemy territory that might contain thousands of hostiles. That's optimal for this type of mission. A larger team would be easier to detect. For Marines can gather the necessary intelligence while remaining unnoticed. And if they are detected? Chen smiled that same disturbing smile Rodriguez had shown earlier. Then, they'll adapt their mission parameters and continue operating until their objectives are complete. As the observers returned to their quarters, the implications of what they had witnessed began to sink in. Humanity's approach to warfare wasn't just different from galactic norms. It represented a fundamental challenge to the basic assumptions underlying interstellar military theory. Most species fought wars to achieve specific political objectives, viewing violence as an unfortunate necessity to be minimized whenever possible. Humans fought wars because they were good at it, viewing violence as an expression of their natural capabilities. The difference wasn't just tactical. It was evolutionary. That evening, Kextar reviewed his recordings of the day's events, trying to process the systematic efficiency with which 600 Marines had dismantled a force more than 3 times their size. Every movement had been purposeful, every action calculated to achieve maximum effect with minimum expenditure of resources. Dr. Sorsh knocked on his door, her scanner readings in hand, and her blue skin pale with exhaustion. I've been analyzing their biometric data from today's operation, she said without preamble. The results are disturbing. What did you find? Their physiological responses to combat stress aren't just unusual. They're impossible by any known biological standards. Heart rates that should cause immediate cardiac arrest, hormone levels that should result in systemic organ failure, neural activity that should produce instant psychological breakdown. But they function normally. Better than normally. The more intense the combat becomes, the more efficiently they perform. It's as if their entire biology is optimized to thrive under conditions that would kill most other species. Kextar stared at the data scrolling across her scanner's display. What are you saying? I'm saying that we're not just documenting a military operation. We're observing an apex predator species in its natural habitat. And their natural habitat is warfare. The implications were staggering. If humanity's military capabilities were based on biological adaptations rather than superior technology or tactics, then their potential for expansion and dominance was virtually limitless. They weren't just another spacefaring species that happened to be good at fighting. They were evolution's answer to the question of what would happen if an entire world devoted millions of years to perfecting the art of violence. As Kextar prepared for sleep, he found himself wondering what tomorrow's reconnaissance mission would reveal about human capabilities. If 4 Marines could operate effectively behind enemy lines against thousands of hostiles, what did that say about humanity's potential for independent strategic action? The thought kept him awake long into the night, staring at the ceiling while distant artillery reminded him that somewhere in the darkness, Humans were probably hunting their enemies with the same casual efficiency they brought to every other aspect of warfare. Tomorrow would bring new revelations about humanity's approach to conflict. Based on what he had witnessed so far, Kextar suspected those revelations would be more disturbing than anything they had seen yet. The reconnaissance team consisted of 4 Marines: Staff Sergeant Riley, Corporal Zhang, Lance Corporal Johnson, and Private First Class Okafor. They stood in the pre-mission briefing room looking completely ordinary. Their equipment loads lighter than the previous operations, but somehow more ominous in its simplicity. Each carried only essential gear, weapons that prioritize stealth over firepower, and enough supplies for a week-long operation behind enemy lines. Kextar studied their faces through his recording equipment, searching for signs of the anxiety that such a mission should generate. For soldiers preparing to infiltrate territory held by thousands of enemies should show some indication of stress or concern. Instead, the Marines displayed the same calm professionalism they brought to routine training exercises. "Your mission is intelligence gathering," explained Major Rodriguez, pointing to a holographic map that showed enemy rear areas extending deep into the continental interior. "We need confirmed numbers, equipment types, supply routes, and command structures. The enemy is planning something significant, and we need to know what it is before they spring it on us." Staff Sergeant Riley, the team leader, nodded. "Rules of engagement, sir? Remain undetected. Gather intelligence. Return safely." Rodriguez paused. "If compromise is unavoidable, use your judgment and adapt accordingly." Dr. Sorsh leaned toward Kextar. "Adapt accordingly? What does that mean?" "It means," whispered Commander Thexari, "that if they're discovered, they have authorization to do whatever they think necessary to complete their mission." The casual way the humans discussed sending 4 people against thousands continued to disturb the observers. Most galactic military forces would consider such a mission either impossible or suicidal. The Marines were treating it as a routine assignment. "Insertion will be by stealth aircraft at 2,200 hours, Rodriguez continued. "You'll have no external support once you're on the ground. Communications will be limited to emergency frequencies only. Expected mission duration is 5 days. "What if they encounter resistance they can't handle?" asked Zarketh. Lieutenant Colonel Chun, who had been observing silently, finally spoke. "They'll handle it. That's what Marines do." The absolute confidence in her voice was unsettling. She wasn't hoping her people would succeed or expressing faith in their training. She was stating a fact, as certain as gravity or thermodynamics. The stealth aircraft that carried the reconnaissance team was a masterpiece of human engineering, designed to evade detection by even the most sophisticated sensor arrays. The observers monitored the insertion from a safe distance, watching the 4 Marines disappear into the enemy's rear area with the same supernatural efficiency they had displayed in previous operations. "Radio silence begins now," announced the pilot. "Next contact will be in 5 days unless they activate emergency protocols." For the observers, the waiting began immediately. Without real-time information about the reconnaissance team's activities, they were left to analyze the implications of what they had already witnessed while wondering what 4 Marines could accomplish deep inside enemy territory. Dr. Sorsh spent the time reviewing her accumulated biometric data, trying to understand the physiological mechanisms that allowed humans to function so effectively under extreme stress. Her findings were becoming increasingly disturbing. "I've identified 17 distinct biological adaptations that enhance human combat performance," she explained to the observation team during one of their evening discussions. "Enhanced adrenaline processing, accelerated neural response times, improved oxygen utilization under stress, modified pain responses, and more. It's as if they've been specifically engineered for warfare." "Engineered by whom?" asked the ethereal strategic advisor. "By their homeworld. Earth appears to have been an environment of constant, extreme selection pressure that favored beings capable of surviving persistent violent conflict. Every major biological system in the human body shows evidence of optimization for combat effectiveness." Zarketh's crystalline features reflected his growing concern. "Are you suggesting that humans are naturally superior warriors compared to other galactic species?" "I'm suggesting that humans aren't really warriors at all. They're predators. Everything about their biology, psychology, and social development has been shaped by millions of years of evolution in an environment where violence wasn't just common, it was necessary for survival. The implications were staggering. If Dr. Source analysis was correct, then humanity's military dominance wasn't based on superior technology or tactical doctrine. It was the inevitable result of evolutionary pressures that had created a species fundamentally optimized for conflict. On the third day of the reconnaissance mission, long-range sensors detected unusual activity in the enemy's rear areas. Communications intercepts suggested confusion and alarm among enemy commanders, though the specific cause remained unclear. "Something is happening out there," Chen observed, studying the intelligence reports. "Enemy units are being redeployed to investigate security breaches, but they can't seem to locate the source of the problem." "Could your team be responsible?" asked Kextar. "For Marines conducting reconnaissance shouldn't generate this level of enemy response," Chen replied. Unless what? Unless they've adapted their mission parameters based on opportunities in the field." The casual way she discussed the possibility that her Marines might have independently escalated their mission was deeply unsettling. Most galactic military forces maintained strict command and control over their units, requiring explicit authorization for any deviation from established objectives. The humans seemed to expect their soldiers to make independent tactical decisions based on battlefield conditions. By the fourth day, enemy communications intercepts revealed a pattern of systematic disruption across their rear areas. Supply convoys were being attacked, communication nodes were going offline, and command personnel were disappearing. The enemy was responding with increasing desperation, deploying thousands of soldiers to hunt for what they assumed must be a large-scale infiltration force. "Remarkable," observed Commander Thexari. 4 Marines are creating enough disruption to tie down significant enemy resources and attention. "It's more than disruption," Chen corrected. "They're systematically degrading the enemy's operational capabilities. This isn't reconnaissance anymore. This is strategic warfare conducted by a 4-person unit." The transformation from intelligence gathering to active combat operations should have been cause for concern. Instead, Chen seemed pleased by her Marines' initiative. The human approach to military operations was proving to be fundamentally different from anything in galactic military doctrine. On the 5th day, as scheduled, the reconnaissance team activated their emergency beacon for extraction. The stealth aircraft departed immediately, leaving the observers to wonder what kind of intelligence the Marines had gathered and what they had done to gather it. The extraction zone was a clearing in dense forest, 50 kilometers behind enemy lines. As the aircraft approached, the observers could see enemy search teams combing the area, desperately trying to locate the infiltrators who had been causing chaos throughout their territory. The Marines appeared from the forest edge like ghosts materializing from shadows. They moved with the same fluid efficiency the observers had come to expect, but there was something different about their appearance. Their equipment showed signs of extensive use. Their uniforms bore the marks of combat, and their faces carried an expression of grim satisfaction. "Mission accomplished," Staff Sergeant Riley reported as soon as they were aboard the aircraft. "We have comprehensive intelligence on enemy capabilities, intentions, and vulnerabilities." "Any complications?" asked Chun. "Nothing we couldn't handle, ma'am." The casual understatement was typical of human military communication, but the observers noticed that Private First Class Okafor was cleaning what appeared to be blood from his combat knife, while Corporal Zhang was performing maintenance on a rifle that showed clear evidence of recent use. During the flight back to FOB Zulu 7, Dr. Sorsh attempted to take biometric readings from the reconnaissance team. What she discovered defied scientific explanation. "Their stress indicators suggest they've been in continuous combat for 5 days, she whispered to Kextar. "Heart rate, hormone levels, neural activity, muscle tension, everything indicates sustained extreme stress. Yet they appear completely normal." "What does that mean?" "It means they've been functioning at peak combat efficiency for a week without rest, food, or medical support while conducting operations behind enemy lines. By any known biological standard, they should be dead." The reconnaissance team's debriefing provided details that shocked even the seasoned observers. Over 5 days, 4 Marines had infiltrated deep into enemy territory, gathered comprehensive intelligence on their opponent's strategic plans, and systematically disrupted their operational capabilities. Enemy strength is approximately 15,000 troops concentrated in 3 major bases, Riley reported with clinical precision. They're planning a coordinated offensive against our positions in 10 days, using a 3-pronged assault strategy designed to overwhelm our defenses through numerical superiority. What about their supply lines? Asked Rodriguez. Significantly degraded. We eliminated 7 major supply convoys, 3 communication hubs, and approximately 40 key personnel. Eliminated. The euphemism couldn't disguise the fact that 4 Marines had independently decided to escalate their reconnaissance mission into a strategic disruption campaign, killing dozens of enemy soldiers and destroying critical infrastructure without authorization. Any enemy response to your activities? Chen inquired. Extensive search operations involving approximately 3,000 troops, Zhang replied. They never came close to locating us, but their efforts to hunt us down prevented them from conducting normal operations. The systematic nature of their activities was becoming clear. The reconnaissance team hadn't just gathered intelligence. They had conducted a comprehensive strategic warfare campaign that tied down thousands of enemy troops, disrupted supply lines, eliminated key personnel, and gathered detailed information about upcoming operations. Casualties? Asked Rodriguez. None, Riley stated simply. For Marines had spent 5 days conducting warfare behind enemy lines against thousands of hostile troops, and returned without a single serious injury. The achievement was so far beyond normal military expectations that none of the observers could formulate appropriate questions. What's your assessment of enemy capabilities? Chen continued. They're competent, but predictable, Okafor offered. Standard tactical doctrine, conventional weapons, traditional command structures. Nothing we haven't seen before. Recommendations? Hit them first, Johnson said immediately. Their planned offensive relies on coordinated timing and overwhelming numbers. If we disrupt their preparation phase, their entire strategy falls apart. The Marines weren't just reporting what they had observed. They were providing tactical recommendations for preemptive strikes against a numerically superior enemy force. Their confidence was absolute, and their strategic thinking was aggressively offensive. After the debriefing, Kextar found himself struggling to process what he had witnessed. For human soldiers had conducted a week-long strategic warfare campaign deep in enemy territory and returned with comprehensive intelligence and tactical recommendations. The mission's scope had evolved far beyond its original parameters, yet the Marines treated their accomplishments as routine professional work. Dr. Sorsch's final biological assessments painted an even more disturbing picture of human capabilities. Their physiological responses to sustained combat stress show no signs of degradation or trauma, she reported to the observation team. If anything, extended combat operations seem to enhance their performance. How is that possible? Asked Zarketh. I believe humans have evolved biological mechanisms that allow them to thrive under conditions that would kill most other species. Prolonged stress, constant threat, sustained violence. These aren't challenges for humans. They're optimal operating conditions. The implications for galactic security were staggering. If humans could conduct strategic warfare with minimal resources and personnel while maintaining peak performance under impossible conditions, their potential for military expansion was virtually unlimited. That evening, Lieutenant Colonel Chun called a final meeting with the observation team. The accumulated intelligence from their week-long documentation effort would form the basis of the Galactic Council's assessment of human military capabilities. What you've witnessed represents standard operating procedures for human military forces, Chen explained. We're not showing off or demonstrating special capabilities. This is how we normally conduct warfare. Normal. Kextar couldn't hide his shock. You consider the systematic dismantling of numerically superior forces to be normal? We consider it effective. Warfare isn't about fair fights or gentlemen's agreements. It's about achieving strategic objectives through application of force. The most efficient application of force is overwhelming violence applied at precisely the right time and place. But the psychological impact on your soldiers is manageable through established protocols and cultural frameworks. My Marines aren't damaged by doing their jobs effectively. They're proud of their professional competence. Commander Thexari leaned forward. What would happen if humanity decided to expand aggressively beyond your current territorial boundaries? Chen's smile was cold and predatory. That's a policy decision above my pay grade. I'm a soldier. I go where my government sends me and accomplish whatever mission they give me. But hypothetically, we would accomplish our objectives with maximum efficiency and minimum friendly casualties. That's what we're trained to do. The observers exchanged worried glances. Chen's matter-of-fact discussion of hypothetical military expansion suggested that humans viewed warfare as a routine diplomatic tool rather than an extreme last resort. As the observation mission concluded, Kextar realized that their documentation had revealed something far more significant than superior military tactics or advanced technology. They had witnessed the emergence of an apex predator species on the galactic stage, a civilization that had evolved specifically for warfare and viewed violence as a natural expression of their biological capabilities. The flight back to the transport ship was subdued. Each observer contemplated the implications of what they had witnessed and the report they would have to deliver to the Galactic Council. Humanity's military capabilities weren't just impressive. They represented a fundamental challenge to the basic assumptions underlying interstellar politics and security. What will you tell the Council? Dr. Sorsh asked Kextar as they prepared their final documentation. The truth, that humanity isn't just another spacefaring species with advanced military capabilities. Their evolution's answer to the question of what happens when an entire world spends millions of years perfecting the art of warfare. And the implications? Kextar stared out the viewport at the stars, wondering how many of them would remain independent if humanity ever decided to expand beyond their current boundaries. That the galaxy may have to choose between accepting human hegemony or finding ways to contain a species that views warfare as their natural profession. The recordings he carried contained evidence of capabilities that would reshape galactic military doctrine and strategic planning. For Marines conducting strategic warfare against thousands of enemies. 600 soldiers systematically dismantling forces 3 times their size. Biological adaptations that allowed humans to thrive under conditions that would kill most other species. But the most disturbing revelation wasn't about human capabilities. It was about human nature itself. They didn't fight because they had to. They fought because they were good at it. And that fundamental difference might change the balance of power in the galaxy forever. As the transport ship prepared to jump to hyperspace, Kextar began composing his preliminary report. The opening line haunted him as he wrote. The Galactic Council must understand that humanity represents a new category of threat, not because of their technology or tactics, but because they have evolved to be the perfect warriors. They don't wage war. They are war. The nightmare would follow him forever, not because of the violence he had witnessed, but because of how natural it had seemed to the humans who wielded it. They had shown him their true nature, and he finally understood why the rest of the galaxy was afraid.